Hi. So when Gordon just explained in the part 5 about the util.store method, I thought I had understood it until I was just going to rebuild the app and realized that I actually didn't really understand how this part of the method was working. I didn't understand how the todos-jQuery key and the empty array value was actually appearing and when it was appearing. So I just followed each step, adding the debugger, and kind of realized how the process was working. And then it's pretty cool, and it's actually pretty simple once you understand it. So the first thing that's happening here, let me go in the application. I'm going to delete this, so we're starting fresh. And then let's go back. I'm going to hit refresh to bring the page. So that calls app init. And then with init comes down in here, we get the util.store gets called with this namespace, and whatever gets returned here is going to be stored to this .todos. So when you go up to util.store, the first part of the argument, the if, isn't run because it's only there's only one argument. So we let's skip over that. It gets skipped over that and goes to the else. So the variable .store is calling localStorage.getItem namespace. So there isn't a namespace for the todos-jQuery. So that comes back false. And then, so because that's false, this section right here doesn't work. So it actually returns on the other side of the OR. So it returns the empty array. This part is the first part that kind of is the key to understanding everything. This empty array gets saved to this .todos. Remember that this is getting called here, and whatever gets returned gets stored there. So we get an empty array now in this .todos. So then we kind of skip through these. This stuff doesn't matter for this context, but this part's key. So it calls new router, and then down here, new router, let me bring it back up here. This .render gets called, and in this .render we see variable todos equals get filter todos. So then we have to make another jump down from the render into get filter todos. And when we go down there, we have two different if statements, but there's no filters yet because there's no todos, so there's no state with active or completed. So it skips the first argument. Then it skips the second argument, and then it says return this .todos. So remember, this .todos is the empty array. So now it's returning this .todos back to render and stores that inside the variable just todos. So then again, we have the empty array here as equal to todos. So these part don't really matter. And then in util.store is where it actually gets created. So if we look here now, there's nothing in the key, there's nothing in the value. We go to the sources, we move forward in the debugger, util.store is getting called again. And now it's getting called with the todos jQuery namespace and this .todos, which is the empty array. So now it has two arguments, where in the first time it only has one argument. And right after this step is when it gets created. So it's going up here and going back up to store, and now it's saying if arguments are greater than 1, and now it is because it has 2, it's returning local storage, setting item, giving it a namespace, and then taking the data in. And the data, remember, is that empty array. So once we hit after this, that's when the todos jQuery and the empty array value appear. So that kind of confused me at first because it goes through a bunch of different methods and has to work back itself back and entering new data and where things are getting stored. But once I understood, it's actually pretty easy. But that only happens on the first time around, at least that I understand. I know I'm not as good as Gordon is explaining this, but I hope that helps people understand how that's actually occurring. Thanks.